The sky was heavy with clouds, pressing low over the city as rain began to fall in earnest. Fat droplets streaked the windows of buses and taxis. Along the sidewalks, umbrellas bloomed in a riot of colors, but for those caught unprepared, the storm was a cold, drenching surprise. In the midst of this downpour, a woman named Lon hurried through the crowded streets, clutching her thin cardigan close, her steps quick and uneven over the slick pavement. Lon was no stranger to adversity. Life had never offered her many comforts, and in recent months, it seemed as though every day brought a new challenge. She had lost her job at a small bakery when it closed, and the bills stacked up faster than she could find work. Yet, she pressed on, determined to keep going for her daughter, Mai, whose hopeful eyes waited for her at home. On this particular day, Lon was on her way to a job interview. She had spent her last coins on bus fare, and there was no money left for a taxi. The rain caught her halfway. She stooped beneath the awning of a closed shop, shivering as she watched the puddles grow deeper. Around her, people hurried by, faces hidden beneath umbrellas and hoods, eyes fixed forward. It was a city of millions, yet at that moment, Lon felt utterly alone. Minutes ticked by. The interview was due to start soon. Lon wiped at her soggy hair, frustration and fear building inside her. She couldn't afford to be late. She couldn't afford to be wet and shivering, her clothes clinging to her skin like a second icy layer. But the rain showed no sign of stopping. Then, out of the blur of passing strangers, a figure paused. It was a man, older, with creases at the corners of his eyes and a steady, kind gaze. He wore a bright yellow raincoat that stood out against the gloom. Without a word, he approached Lon, unclasped the raincoat, and held it out to her. She stared at him, startled. "Please," he said, his voice gentle. "You look like you need this more than I do." Lon hesitated, embarrassed by her own need, but the man smiled and gestured again. "Take it. I'm almost home, and you look like you have somewhere important to be." His words were simple, but his tone carried warmth, an unspoken understanding that sometimes what we need most is not shelter from the storm, but kindness from a stranger. Lon slipped the raincoat on, overwhelmed by relief. The fabric was soft, lined with a faded checkered pattern that suggested years of use. She thanked him, her voice barely audible above the rain. The man nodded and turned away, disappearing into the crowd as quietly as he had arrived. With the raincoat shielding her, Lon hurried to her interview. The receptionist gave her a sympathetic smile as she entered, but Lon felt a quiet confidence growing inside her. She answered the questions thoughtfully, her nerves soothed by the memory of the stranger's kindness. When she left, the rain had eased to a drizzle, and she wore the raincoat like a badge of hope. Days passed. Lon received a call. She had gotten the job. The salary was modest, but it was enough to keep her and Mai afloat. She worked hard, each day remembering the warmth of that yellow raincoat and the man who had given it to her, but the story didn't end there. Months later, on another gray morning, Lon noticed a young student waiting at a bus stop, soaked to the skin. The girl looked anxious, clutching a stack of textbooks to her chest. Something in her posture reminded Lon of herself on that stormy day. Without thinking, Lon stepped forward, slipped off her raincoat, the same one she had received from the kind stranger, and draped it over the girl's shoulders. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. "But what about you?" Lon smiled. "I'll be fine. You need it more." She remembered the man's words and repeated them, feeling the circle of kindness complete itself. The girl's gratitude was immediate, her smile bright despite the rain. Lon walked away, the drizzle cool against her skin, but her heart was warm. She thought of her daughter at home, and of how kindness, like the rain, could spread far beyond what we see. That night, Lon told Mai the story. She described the storm, the stranger, and the yellow raincoat. Mai listened quietly, her eyes wide and shining. When Lon finished, Mai said, "Does that mean we can always help someone, even if we don't have much?" Lon nodded. "Kindness doesn't depend on what we have. Sometimes it's as simple as sharing what we do have, or giving what we've received." The lesson settled in, gentle and strong. From that day forward, Lan and Mai looked for small ways to be kind. Whether it was sharing a meal with a neighbor, listening to a friend, or simply offering a smile to someone who seemed alone. Over time, Lan saw how kindness grew. At work, she noticed her colleagues supporting each other in small, quiet ways. A cup of coffee offered to a tired coworker, a word of encouragement before a challenging meeting. She watched as Mai befriended a shy classmate, inviting her to play when others had turned away. The raincoat was gone, passed on to someone else who needed it, but its legacy lingered. It was not the object itself that mattered, but the spirit behind the gift, the willingness to see another's need and answer it with compassion. Years later, Mai, now a young woman, became a teacher. She kept her mother's story close to her heart, sharing it with her own students during stormy days. She taught them that kindness was not a grand gesture, but a series of small acts that could change lives, one person at a time. In a world often hurried and distracted, the memory of that raincoat reminded her to slow down and notice, to see the people behind the umbrellas, to recognize when someone needed shelter, and to offer what she could. The story of the raincoat became a quiet legend in their community. People spoke of it when they saw a neighbor helping another, or when a stranger offered their seat on a crowded bus. It became a symbol not just of shelter from the rain, but of the power we all hold to make a difference, even in the smallest ways. Lan's life was not transformed by wealth or luck, but by a simple act of kindness. On a day when she felt invisible, someone saw her need and responded without expectation. That moment gave her strength, and in turn, she gave strength to others. The raincoat, bright against the gray, was more than a piece of clothing. It was a reminder that storms come and go, but kindness endures. It passes from hand to hand, heart to heart, rippling outward in ways we may never fully see. As Lan grew older, she often reflected on that rainy afternoon. She realized that the man who had given her the raincoat had likely forgotten the moment, but for her, it became a turning point, a source of hope when hope was scarce. She wondered how many others he had helped, how many small acts of kindness had gone unnoticed, yet changed lives in ways both quiet and profound. She understood, too, that the true gift was not the raincoat, but the feeling of being seen and cared for. In a world where it is easy to feel unseen among the crowds, kindness is a light that catches the eye, a warmth that lingers long after the storm has passed. The story of the raincoat is not unique. Every day, in every city and town, people extend small kindnesses, an umbrella shared with a stranger, a meal offered to someone hungry, a listening ear for someone lost in worry. These moments may seem fleeting, but they accumulate, weaving a tapestry of compassion that holds communities together. For Lan, for Mai, and for all those touched by the quiet generosity of others, the lesson was clear. We do not need to wait for grand opportunities to change the world. Sometimes, it is enough to notice the person beside us, to offer what we can, and to trust that even the smallest act of kindness can ripple outward, transforming not just one life, but many. As the years passed, Lan watched her daughter carry the story forward. She saw how Mai's students learned to care for one another, how families in their neighborhood grew closer, how people began to pause in the rain, looking for someone to help. The memory of the yellow raincoat became a gentle challenge, to see, to give, and to believe in the enduring power of kindness. In the end, the storm passed, as all storms do. The city returned to its rhythm, the sun broke through the clouds, and life went on. But for Lan, and for those whose lives she touched, the world was subtly changed, not by the rain or the hardship, but by the simple, enduring truth that kindness, given freely, can shelter us from even the fiercest storms. And so the story continues, one raincoat at a time, one act of kindness after another, spreading warmth and hope wherever it goes.